Welcome to the video. Today I will be discussing a dangerous phenomenon called virtue signaling. It's getting way out of hand. I guess this top I'm wearing is an example of virtue signaling. I'm appeasing the leftist, hyper-woke, snowflaking, SJW, feminist, cultural Marxist, bleeding heart posers by signaling that being gay is fire. Look at this dog virtue signaling. He's licking the cat, trying to appear all virtuous, when really all he wants is to, see that? See that? Yeah, he was pretending to be virtuous when really all he wanted was to eat that My name is Tara Mooknee, and this is the only channel on YouTube where all videos are written and produced by a cow. She couldn't be in the video today because she's at a spa, because girl, you deserve it. If you like and subscribe, she might appear in the next one. Hypocrisy is the homage vice pays to virtue. When you hear the phrase virtue signaling, what comes to mind? Is it celebrities wearing social justice slogans? Is it girl boss, girl power, you go girl advertising? Is it companies rainbow-fying everything during Pride Month? A MAGA hat? Or putting a French flag filter over your Facebook profile photo after a terrorist attack in Paris? Wow, that gesture was particularly hollow. It wasn't necessarily a bad thing to do, just completely pointless. Facebook's weird. A wise friend of mine once said that Facebook is the Florida of social media, and yes, I agree. And Mark Zuckerberg should be on trial for crimes against humanity. If you don't know what I'm talking about, make sure to listen to this podcast about how Facebook allegedly enabled not one, but multiple sides. No, I'm not joking. Anyways, if we take the literal meaning of the phrase virtue signaling being to signal one's moral values, then what's the problem? We do it all the time. It's a form of communication. Well, it's come to mean something else entirely. It gets even more complicated by the fact that it has several different meanings. The action or practice of publicly expressing opinions or sentiments intended to demonstrate one's good character or the moral correctness of one's position on a particular issue. An attempt to show other people that you are a good person, for example, by expressing opinions that will be acceptable to them. Behavior that is aimed at demonstrating one's own enlightened attitudes. The sharing of one's point of view on a social or political issue, often on social media, in order to garner praise or acknowledgement of one's righteousness from others who share the point of view, or to passively rebuke those who do not. Virtue signaling, the action or practice of publicly expressing opinions or sentiments intended to demonstrate one's good character or the moral correctness of one's position on a particular issue. Anyone who says they aren't attracted to 18-year-olds is virtuing hard. Okay, we'll just put a pin in that one. Anyways, the point is that the meaning varies and it's unclear who exactly invented it. James Bartholomew, director of the Museum of Communist Terror and writer for The Spectator, claims he invented it, but that is not true. The phrase was used by scholars in as early as 2010, and even earlier, albeit indirect usage, can be found in David Foster Wallace's essay, Tense Present, published in Harper's Magazine in 2001. PCE, politically correct English, functions primarily to signal and congratulate certain virtues in the speaker. In fairness, I'm neither a journalist nor a scholar, so it's possible that Bartholomew came up with the phrase all on his own and didn't realise that others had come up with it before him. And despite being a journalist at The Spectator with all the resources, he didn't find that out, even though a goon with a mullet did with just a quick Google search. He really wants you to know that he invented it. No one else, especially not Libby pervs.
Since April, I have watched with pleasure, and then incredulity, how the phrase has leapt from appearing in a single article into the everyday language of political discourse. One of the first journalists to pick up on the phrase was Liz Jones in the Mail on Sunday on the 3rd of May. Not long after, Libby Purves used it in The Times, the 11th of May. Janan Ganesh in the Financial Times, 20th of July, wrote about Labour Party leaders, for whom Europeanism is just a virtue signalling gesture, like wearing a charity ribbon. 2 days later, Helen Lewis used it in The New Statesman, saying, "A lot of what happens on Facebook, as with Twitter, is virtue signalling, showing off how right on you are." This month, use of the phrase has gone through the roof, appearing in newspapers almost on a daily basis. It has been deployed by Nick Cohen in a Spectator blog, Antonia Hoyle in Stella magazine, James Denpole on Breitbart, Katronia Stewart in the Glasgow Herald, Memphis Barker in the Independent, and Alistair Heath in the Daily Telegraph. Nikki Campbell, the best-known presenter on Radio 5 Live, tweeted, with 102,000 followers, 13th of September. There is much virtue signalling going on at the moment. A search on the Guardian website reveals that contributors there have used it 241 times. Good grief, it has even appeared in West Ham Online. It is slightly frustrating that some people have credited Libby Purves with creating the phrase. Unlike Liz Jones, she did not mention where it came from. But I forgive her. I am a fan of hers and the way she presents midweek on Radio 4. We were contemporaries at Oxford, and I'll never forget seeing her walking in front of me wearing hot pants. That sort of thing creates a special bond.
The thing that's so funny about this is that he did popularise the term. He just didn't invent it. It's fine, James. You don't need to lie. You okay? That being said, Bartholomew did popularise the term and made it mean what it has come to mean today.
Want to be virtuous? Saying the right things violently on Twitter is much easier than real kindness.
Saying things violently on Twitter.
No one actually has to do anything. Virtue comes from mere words, or even from silently held beliefs. There was a time, in the distant past, when people thought you could only be virtuous by doing things. That sounds hard. Much more convenient to achieve virtue by expressing hatred of those who think the health service could be improved by introducing competition.
Yes, because thinking necessities like healthcare should be privatised isn't a position worthy of hatred. It's not like that leads to people dying. Economic Darwinism is good, actually.
Twitter lends itself very well to virtue signalling, since it is much easier to express anger and scorn in 140 characters than to make a reasoned argument.
Ah, yes, Twitter. The social media site that is designed so that you can't make nuanced arguments and has an algorithm that pushes the most inflammatory content. But yes, if people summarise their political views on Twitter, then they must do absolutely nothing else than tweet. It's not like they have lives. Well, I guess there are some people that live on Twitter, but not the average person. Anyways, this reflects what this phrase has come to mean. Virtue signalling relates to older idioms like, do as I say, not as I do. All talk, no action. Talk the talk and walk the walk. Nowadays, it's primarily used as a pejorative to describe someone performing virtue as opposed to actually being virtuous. Like performative activism. And this is a legit thing, especially corporate virtue signalling. Think rainbow washing, which is a term used to describe how corporations spray everything rainbow during Pride Month, whilst not walking the walk, or in some cases, actively harming LGBT rights. Interestingly, philosophers have argued that when people use the term virtue signalling, what they're actually saying is moral grandstanding. So to grandstand is to use moral talk for personal gain. Regardless of what name you give it, this behaviour poses a host of issues. It leads to outrage fatigue. People are so tired of everything being important that nothing is important now. And it can lead to people making increasingly strong claims to outdo each other, like a moral arms race. Another consequence of grandstanding is that people stop taking moral conversations seriously. Like how gaslighting has been overused to the point that it's lost its meaning. That being said, I have a lot of issues with the phrase virtue signalling in its current form. Similarly to political correctness, the right have co-opted and overused virtue signalling to the point of meaninglessness. It's regularly used as an ad hominem attack towards any utterance of leftist or even liberal values. I joked at the beginning of the video that my gay t-shirt would be called virtue signalling, but honestly I wouldn't be surprised.
Y'all know what we're celebrating today? Mother's Day, and I am so thankful to have a mother like mine who supports me through all my craziness and loves on me and buys me Chips Ahoy cookies, Chewy, the original, everything under the sun. My mom knows I love my cookies, so get those cookies.
A couple of years ago, drag queen Vanessa Vanjie Mateo did a Mother's Day ad for Chips Ahoy, a cookie brand. So you might be asking, what's political about this? Well, nothing. She doesn't tell you who to vote for or anything, she just talks about cookies.
And then it just pisses off the right because we're like, please get your politics out of stuff. I obviously said thank you for helping me narrow down my cookie preference. No more Chips Ahoy for me. Top comment, which is good. It's just obviously very controversial.
It's telling that the people upset by this are politicizing it. Don't get me wrong, corporations are very guilty of using social issues to sell stuff. But this is not an example of that. It's just showing a drag queen existing, because RuPaul's Drag Race is one of the most watched reality TV shows in the world.
Obviously very controversial.
How do people find the energy? Virtue signaling has become a replacement for champagne socialist, which basically describes someone who is middle or upper class but has socialist values, or at least proclaims to. If someone states a policy position, their opponent focuses on the perceived hypocrisy rather than the argument itself. Ding ding ding, ad hominem. The reason why these phrases are slimy, slithery, and sludgy is that they purport to be the counters in rational argument, but dismiss opposed arguments without engaging with them. They rely on destroying the credibility of the argument by insinuating the personal unreliability of the person who makes the argument. Your opponents are driven by emotion and not by reason. By the desire for popularity and not for truth, by the search for advantage and not for truth or integrity. You, on the other hand, are the stern representative of pure reason, hard love, and disinterested judgment. It's like when people say facts don't care about your feelings, but they have no interest in actually finding the facts themselves. It's become an ad hominem weapon, and assumes when someone makes usually a left-leaning moral or political argument, it's automatically hypocritical and self-aggrandizing, and it stigmatizes empathy.
I've choked on tears while watching patients say goodbye to their loved ones via an iPad.
Another day, another virtue signal.
Emotion might not be an argument, but that doesn't mean you can't feel emotions about the argument you're making. Unsurprisingly, neologisms like this stifle productive discussion, and thus causes a devaluation of the social currency of moral talk. So here's an older example. Radical chic, which was a term coined by journalist Tom Wolfe in his 1970 essay, Radical Chic, That Party at Lenny's, to describe the promotion of radical political causes by celebrities and elites. The term is still used sometimes to describe people who describe themselves to have socialist values whilst living upper-class lifestyles. On 14th of January 1970, Leonard Bernstein, West Side Story composer, hosted a gathering along with his wife Felicia in their apartment in Manhattan's Upper East Side. In attendance were some of the wealthiest folk of the New York arts world, as well as several members of the Black Panther Party. Wolfe was very critical of this gathering, arguing that they were endorsing leftist radicalism to assuage white guilt and garner prestige. I wasn't at the party, so I can't say for sure what was going on there, but it was reported that Don Cox, spokesperson for the Black Panther Party, was trying to win support for the cause Panther 21, a group charged with conspiracy to attack police and bomb the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens. A year later, they were acquitted. So what did Don Cox have to say about this gathering?
That night, we managed to collect a decent sum to help towards bail money for the New York 21, but it was writer Tom Wolfe who profited most from the evening. He wrote a lengthy article about the affair for New York Magazine, and then later turned it into a book. I wonder how much he made off all that. I never liked leeches and sneaks. He had snuck in with a tape recorder and recorded the whole evening so he could profit from the repression of the Panthers and mock our efforts to raise funds to free people who were subsequently found to be innocent, which we knew was the case all along. As this layer of American society began to give us support, The reaction from the authorities was immediate and fierce. They launched a national campaign of slander and intimidation against what they, following Tim Wolf, called radical chic. Many of our supporters from that class were intimidated and retreated. And the rest of the evenings we had planned similar to the Bernstein affair were canceled. I had a secret meeting with Felicia Bernstein, and she told me of the misery she and Leonard had endured since the night of the gathering. They had been receiving constant hate mail and phone calls, including threats to their lives. She wanted to know if there was anything I could do to help. I could think of nothing, other than to reiterate my belief that all people should stand up and defend what they believe. Otherwise, fascism has fertile ground in which to grow.
Well, that's pretty damning. Listen, I have no loyalty to the Bernsteins. I'm not saying they were saints. Maybe they were just posers and they didn't actually care about Panther 21. But if you're going to comment on the authenticity of their relationship with the Black Panthers, perhaps ask members of the Black Panthers. Just an idea.
Entitled Radical Chic, Wolf's scathing, satirical portrayal of the event criticized Bernstein's passion for civil rights as disingenuous racial tourism, but many objected to his mockery of African American vernacular and his references to gas chambers. One member of the Black Panthers infamously called him a dirty, blatant, lying, racist dog.
What's with this culture of apathy? As if it's better to do nothing than to potentially do something imperfectly. I've come across this so much, and was admittedly guilty of this in the past. Take, for instance, taxing the rich. When middle-class people say, let's tax the rich more, people will respond, oh, well that means you'll be taxed more. Oh, look at you. You claim to care about poor people when you have an iPhone. You're such a hypocrite. I'm better because I don't even try to help the poor. Ooh, speaking of, let's get into vice signaling. Vice, baby. So hopefully you've learned by now that people of all political associations are capable of and guilty of virtue signaling. Liberals do it by posting black squares on Instagram and clogging up the Black Lives Matter hashtag, and conservatives do it by holding Bibles whilst they call gays abominable. But what if you don't even want to pretend to be good? What if you're in a circle where it's cool to be an arsehole? That's where vice signaling comes in handy. It was coined by journalist and historian David M. Perry. I really think my concept of vice signaling is such an important tool for understanding modern conservative culture. There are so many things for which they espouse value that they do not care about, other than getting rid of it would make someone they don't like feel good. They know something is bad and they talk about how much they like it because they hope it might hurt someone. Conservatives also virtue signal all the time. That's a slightly different phenomenon. Back to vice signaling. Here's an example. Masks. Masks have been branded by some as a form of virtue signaling. I disagree with that assertion because masks are more than mere symbols. They are tools for public health. But I would say that the performative refusal to wear masks is a form of vice signaling. Right-wing pundits don't mention 1984 challenge. Masks are censorship, people! You know what else are? Seatbelts. Buses are the land of the free. What makes for effective vice signaling? It must present a clear distinction between a dissident and principled in-group and a dominant and corrupt out-group. We all like to feel countercultural sometimes, like we're sticking it to the elites, the establishment, the man. But anti-maskers, anti-vaxxers, COVID truthers are obviously doing more than perpetuating the culture wars. Vice signaling to say, hey, I'm such a rebel is all fun and games until you die. So to me, this isn't even funny, it's just sad. Actually, this one is. I know that wasn't their intention, but the way it's laid out looks like they're saying no to saving the children, which they are by opposing vaccines, but not in the way they intended. Another common one is when transphobes go out of their way to misgender trans people. You know the clip of Ben Shabibo where he correctly genders Laverne Cox because she's a woman, but then walks it back by calling her a man because he's got to stay on message? Because then your audience might think that trans people deserve common decency. Now, I did a fair bit of dunking on The Spectator earlier, and I want to be fair. I don't want to be a big old meanie to the British media. So I found a better article of theirs. The Tories are the masters of vice signalling. I'm listening. If you want to get on in right-wing politics, it is essential you master the art of vice signalling. You must show you are tough, hard-headed, a dealer in uncomfortable truths, and, above all, that you live in the real world. As if any of us had the option of living anywhere else. Facts don't care about your feelings, baby. Vice signalling is as vain and self-aggrandizing as virtue signalling is. Since they came to power in 2010, the Tories have made a point of cracking down on benefits of the poor. Only by imposing the toughest sanctions could the feckless and the freeloading be persuaded to stop living on handouts and find a job. The fact that most poverty is concentrated in families where the adults have low-wage jobs was glossed over. A 5-year study by York University concluded that sanctions had failed. As I mentioned earlier, there's this notion that ruthlessness and a lack of compassion automatically means rationality. Certain politicians and pundits will be as callous as possible in order to appeal to the "I just say it how it is" crowd, and then wonder why they stop getting invited to family gatherings. And I don't think this is just a conservative thing necessarily, but I would argue that liberals and the left are more likely to be guilty of virtue signalling than vice signalling. Reason being because people on that side of the aisle tend to value, or at least claim to value, equality, welfare, you know the drill. Therefore, liberal politicians, and I say liberal rather than leftist because there aren't really many leftist politicians, will try to appeal to these values because the tough, bad cop approach wouldn't work on them. So pretending to care about social issues works instead. Anyways, in conclusion, virtue signalling, by its current definition, is annoying. Vice signalling is also annoying, but can also be dangerous. Wear your seat belts. To end on a high note, let's look at today's subscription pet shoutout. This is Nacho from Mexico, and when he gets scolded, not my words, his grandma calls him Ignacio. He's a mini... I can't pronounce that. He enjoys teasing other dogs in the park because he's so small and fast, and he has a big brother called Dobby. I love them both with all my heart. Let's give them a round of applause. If you liked this video, make sure to give it a like, because one like equals one seatbelt for one child on a school bus, because for some reason so many of them still don't have seatbelts. And I've got some bad news for you. You know how when you subscribe you become a little subscription, and when you become a little subscription I will keep you underneath my pillow in my room with the rest of my little subscriptions? I've run out of room under my pillow. You're all suffocating, so I must stop. Sorry about that. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.